Hello and welcome back. Thank you for joining me for another video. In this I'll try and explain why I'm vegan and also what is the underpinning behind this idea for me at least. But let me first start with a story about reindeer on St. Matthew's Island, and I promise that the story will make sense by the end of the video. So there's a very interesting case about reindeer that were introduced to St. Matthew's Island, which is the area of Alaska, by the US Coast Guard. And they're introduced as a backup food source for the armed forces. And they're introduced there in the 1940s. They took about 29 individuals or so, and they were left to roam around and to eat lichen, which is their favorite food source. And even though the Coast Guard left the place afterwards, scientists decided to see what happens to the population that was introduced there. And the interesting thing is that even though there's lichen, which is their preferred food, there are no predators for the reindeer. So they wondered what would happen to the population under such circumstances. And the reindeer, well, as expected, by 1963 the population grew to about 6,000 individuals. And why wouldn't it? They had all the food that they could want. It was open. It was optimal for their development. The shocking thing is that about 3 years later, in 1963, when they visited them again, the population had dropped down to 42. So what happened? Was it disease? Was it poaching? No, it wasn't any of that. The population had grown so large that they very quickly reached a point where they ate all the available food for themselves, and they died of starvation. Pretty horrible. But the one little thing that was missing to keep the population in check were the predators that usually you'd consider predators to be a danger, but they also keep your population in check and keep the balance between the predator, herbivore, and the plants in balance, and that way all the populations can be healthy, even though obviously the herbivores suffer from the predators' predation, and the predators suffer when there's not enough for them to eat. So the interesting thing is that even though the natural proclivity of the reindeer, which evolved over all its history, is to procreate as much as possible and eat as much as possible, and this serves it really well, one little change in its environment, removing the predators, the very successful strategy can very easily turn into its tomb, into its death, to detriment. So let's leave that story aside for a little bit, and let's talk about what veganism means to me and what my personal journey was with. And first and foremost, I don't really consider myself to be a vegan and such, because I think the term is a misnomer, like atheism or anything like that, because it's defined by what you don't do. A vegan doesn't do anything. He or she avoid eating animal products, and I like defining myself more about what I do rather than what I don't do, because I don't do a virtual infinity of things. And if I had to define myself by everything I don't do, I would never have time to finish the list. I consider myself more of a anti-carnist, anti-revolutionary. And what do I mean by that? I am thoroughly convinced that the human animal is not naturally a predator. I think that you would be, regardless of whether you're vegan or not, or anti-carnist, or whatever you want to call yourself, I'm pretty sure that you agree with that. You don't see many people doing what predators do, even omnivorous animals that chase animals and eat them do, which is to hunt them down with their bodies, find bodies on the floor and eat them like opportunistic carrion eaters. Humans don't generally speaking do that. They use tools, they transform the bodies of the animals that they kill with fire, they sanitize them, they spice them, they basically make them unrecognizable, whereas all predators that we know use their bodies to catch the animals and eat them whole and then regurgitate the fur and so forth and so on. Now, I'm not claiming that we should only be doing that which is automatically natural to us. That would be the naturalistic fallacy. But I do question the wisdom of having adopted the carnist mindset and having stayed in it for as long as we have without reflection. And I'll expand on that a little bit later on. So my personal journey. My personal journey started when I was about 4 or 5 years old, when I witnessed the slaughter of a pig. My family at the time in Eastern Europe used to hire a butcher and buy a pig once a year because food was scarce, or relatively scarce at that time under the regime of the time, and they used to slaughter a pig once a year and just use it for the rest of the year. And this time I was invited or taken to witness what this meant. And for a 4-year-old child, when you're told that you're going to do something special with the family, I expected a celebration, I expected something special. And what I witnessed was quite the opposite. So I saw the pig being led out, and being stabbed in the throat, and it was bleeding out, and his blood was being captured for blood sausages, and it screamed and writhed on the floor, and the experience itself was shocking for me. I felt deep sorrow, and it had done nothing to deserve this, and it was basically being murdered, held down by two grown men, stabbed in the neck, bleeding out. It was as shocking as you can expect. And it was nothing like the celebration that I was expecting it to be. Obviously, I didn't know what to expect as a 4-year-old. Later on, as it was being butchered or processed by my family, the ritual of it being normalized and being used, obviously, and explained to me that this is okay and this is fine, I had no choice but to cooperate with this mindset because I was 5. I didn't have the critical thinking capabilities to think whether this was actually necessary, and also to think if this is normal and good, then why did my biology and my mind react so with such horror to this? If this is something that's I'm supposed to be doing, then why is it that I feel such revulsion to the act itself? So that was my first encounter with the dissonance between what's being done and what's being expected and being explained. This obviously sank into the background as I was growing up, and later on in my teenage years I had the chance to revisit this as one of my friends, one of my best friends at the time, went vegan. I didn't understand what that meant, and he became very active in protecting animals. Now, I'd always had a soft spot for animals. I always loved dogs and cats, obviously, and I always had deep empathy, and I loved birds, and it's not like love for animals was far away from my heart, but it didn't really translate into anything meaningful, active. And this person who I loved very dearly, a very dear friend of mine, went vegan, and he became very active in protecting animals, and he brought a video cassette. It just shows how old I am, and he wanted me to watch it with him, and he told me that this is footage from a slaughterhouse. And seeing as I trusted him and I wanted to know what this is about, and he had adopted this new idea, I wanted to participate and support him in it. And I watched it, and we watched 2 cows being slaughtered in a slaughterhouse, having the throat slit, being suspended from chains in a slaughterhouse, and I watched the blood gush out of their throat, and the eyes grow dim, and the fear, and I just didn't know what to do with myself. I had no answer as to why this is being done to them. They had done nothing to attack anyone. They had done nothing to harm anyone, and I was kind of numb, and I didn't know what to do. And I kind of started to understand what he was talking about, because the reality of what went on behind everything that went on my plate started to sink in a little bit. That this is the day-to-day reality of what goes behind the scenes, that's not being shown to me, that's kind of hidden from me. And that was another blow to the consensus and the status quo that I'd been living in, and elective ignorance that I was living in. And this person then became much more active. He participated in shutting down experimental farms that wanted to grow monkeys for experiments, and very successful. He also introduced me to vegan food, which at the time was not very palatable. It was rubbery tofu. But because I loved this person very much, I actually wanted to listen and understand. And he went on to greater and better things, and our lives took us on different paths later on. And I not actually made a change at this point, but this stuck with me. It stuck with me, and the question and started worming itself into my soul, into my mind, as, is it really necessary? Is it really something that I want to participate in? Why is it not being spoken about more widely? Why is it that we don't see this more widely around us? After all, nobody would hesitate to take a child to a carrot farm, but we don't really take school trips to slaughterhouses to show them what goes on behind almost every one of their meals. And it just so happens that it took more than 10 years for me to actually consolidate my point of view on this. And eventually the thing that brought it home to me was that I'd watched a lecture. Many of you may or may not know him. This was a very powerful, very convincing, and very charismatic, not because trying to say a message, but simply because the force of the personality. Gary Yourofsky had the best speech you'll ever watch on YouTube, and I just happened to chance on it, and I watched it, and it finally brought all the things home. It not only showed the suffering of the animals, but it also showed the suffering of the people who are involved in the suffering of the animals, how they become psychopathic simply out of necessity. Because if your job day to day is to brutalize, murder, corral, enslave, steal the babies of animals that you clearly see you have no reason to do so because they've done nothing against you, then you have two choices. You either stop doing it or you justify it in your mind and you become brutal towards them. And the many videos of people beating calves and hitting them and threatening them almost psychopathically brought the point home to me that what I was funding with my meals and wasn't only the murder and suffering of animals, but the driving insane of many people. Many people who are unfortunately are not fortunate to have better jobs. Many people perhaps are pressed into this by life. And that's the point where I decided that I no longer want to be part of it. I'm not really interested in participating in something that I myself would not want to be part of, neither on the receiving end or the delivery end. Not a pacifist by any means, but I don't believe in harming those who have the capacity to suffer, who have done nothing to harm me or to do anything against me. And then I started researching nutrition because I wanted to do it very responsibly, and I found out that as a frugivorous ape that I am, there's absolutely nothing that I actually have to source from an animal source, just because it was a habit, just because it was tradition, just because we so happen to have chanced upon this highly caloric source of food. It's not necessarily helpful for us because all the people that I knew in my family who ate meat were morbidly obese and unhealthy. They kept eating lots of cream, lots of animal products. Just because it's there, it doesn't mean that I have to continue. And I stopped, and that was my journey to my personal vegan journey and my personal rejection of the carnist revolution. I researched it as well. When did humans start eating meat? And although this is mired in the fog of paleo history and we don't really know for sure, but the best theories are that we used to find corpses and find what other predators left behind, because as I said, our bodies are not really suitable. We're very slow, we are not very powerful compared to other predators. Definitely no human being, no matter how strong, would survive a battle against a grown lion or even leopards, cheetahs, so to speak. They are suitable for this type of lifestyle and we aren't. But we are clever, we can use tools and cooperation and so forth, so I don't deny the fact that we can. But the question is, at what cost, both to our health and to our mindset? And this isn't where I stopped. Thinking about the issue. So the question is, if I found this, then why wasn't everyone else empathetic? Why did I take such a long time? Why did my society tell me that it was okay, and why did it hide it behind happy cartoons of cows and happy cartoons of chickens and so forth? Why was this being practiced in darkness? And what's the price? So why aren't we all empathetic? Why aren't we naturally, as the 4-year-old that was me, shocked by the act of murdering a sentient and sapient being that has the capacity to suffer and feel fear? And I researched it a bit deeper as a thinker and as a philosopher. And the dark truth is that empathetic suicide, killing your empathy, is very profitable. You may start out as empathetic, but if you are able to use your brain and create cognitive dissonance and create a story in which your empathy doesn't matter, shouldn't matter, or the other side, whether human or animal, does not deserve your empathy, then you can exploit them. And exploitation in nature works. Enslavement works. Murder works. Obviously, it comes at a price. The price is the lie that you tell yourself, both personally as a society. When you create this lie that allows you to exploit, that allows you to take the resources of, you become momentarily richer, and you will have invented a weapon that you can very successfully use both against the natural world and against other human beings. You can invent yourself a god that gives you particular rights of a particular place, and you can become very convinced with the story, and it works. It galvanizes you into armies, it galvanizes you into outrage when someone else challenges your right to a particular practice or property. But very soon, you'll find that the same weapon that you invented, or was invented for you by nature and planted in your mind by the sheer chance of your brain scanning for options, you'll find this weapon used against you in the battleground. Mr. Kalashnikov, who invented the AK-47 or the AK, in order to provide a weapon for his side, maybe didn't think it before, but very soon found out that this weapon can be copied and used against his side as well. And this is always the case. Whenever we invent a weapon, whether it's ideological or physical, and we think we've gained some amazing advantage, we'll very, very soon find the same version or even improved version of it used in the battlefield of ideas, society, or actual war used against us, because this is the nature of human beings, and in nature in general, we copy, we replicate, and we use. So when we commit empathetic suicide in order to allow ourselves to exploit and to kill, we do two things. One of them is we introduce a very dangerous weapon that we'll find ourselves fighting against very soon on the battlefield. And two, we lose part of our ability to be honest, because the cognitive dissonance that we have to carry is massive. Oh, this being's feelings don't matter. Then why do ours? Why would ours matter in the eyes of others if we decided, or we agree to continue to disregard the feelings of this being who has done nothing against us that we can demonstrate is dangerous? Because as I said before, I'm not a pacifist. If something attacks you, defend yourself vigorously. But if they don't, then you don't actually have a rational reason to do so, unless you can demonstrate that you actually need to use their bodies for sustenance. And no one so far has managed to do so to my satisfaction. And having abandoned carnism low these 12 years ago, I have not yet died of any kind of deficiency, and my blood tests that I take every year are perfectly in line with what's considered to be healthy. So, yes, letting go of empathy is a very powerful weapon. Letting go of consideration and taking the other side's genuine experience is a very powerful weapon. But every strategy, no matter how successful, becomes a death trap if it's not examined. If it's not examined, if it's taken to its logical conclusion. Because look at humanity and what has happened. We've developed further and further and more powerful weapons, and further and further deeper convictions about how just we are in our cause, and how unjust our enemies are in our cause. And we are at the brink of, yet again, as I speak in 2025, of the potential nuclear war. We have used that technological advantage to discover things, and we've created weapons, and we have proliferated them throughout the world, but yet not have fully come to understand what to use and what not to use. So in my mind, we are all ultimately reindeers on St. Matthew's Island. Yes, we're very numerous, and we are the 6,000 individuals, but how close are we to reach that breaking point in which we've eaten all the lichen, and which we've destroyed all our empathy in the blind pursuit of the automatic arc of competitiveness that leads to our own extinction? So in my mind, in my view, the step back, the careful step back from this automatic arc of blind competitiveness is a step back from the arc of extinction, and a careful rekindling, because I understand how dangerous it is to be fully only empathetic and non-competitive. I'm not saying that this is easy, but my suggestion is that this is a very careful step back from the automatic arc of extinction. And I understand people who don't do it. I see it often on social media or in general, people who are automatically derisive towards it and say bacon. I actually understand. I understand how dangerous to step back from your munitions factories, from the strategies that stood you in long standing, because if we take one step back from this, then where do we stop? Because ultimately, if you unravel the stories that allowed us to claim the lands that we did, and the rights that we did, and the rights over others that we did, it could very well unravel our entire identities as nations and as people. And that is a danger, and I understand the danger of those who are not willing to do so. I'm not frustrated by people who are not ready to do so. I actually understand. And the conversation that I offer is the one that I offer here. A careful step back from the deadly strategies that we have devised, and I devised even for us by nature, because ultimately I think that these ideas pop into our minds when the opportunities arise, predatory opportunities, the opportunity to steal, the opportunity to exploit. The immediate advantage is clear, and the long-term price isn't. But if we are to be thinking beings, if we are to actually obey Socrates' order to know ourselves, gnosis authon, as he said, then I think that we need to take very careful steps back from the strategies that in the long term do not give us power but guarantee our destruction. So this is the reason that I have done this ultimately and stuck with it as long as I have. And I invite you to consider it as well from this perspective. Thank you very much for joining me. If you want to support my work, then links in the links below. And if you have comments or questions, then please do not hesitate to leave them. Please join me next time, and this channel will not only have difficult topics to discuss, but also vegan cooking, which I'm very good at and enjoy very much. So join me next time for the next video. Thank you very much.